So I want to show you a few takedown options off of a Russian tie. Now, I'm going to show this from both a sport perspective, also self-defense perspective on just how we get to the Russian tie position. Now, typically from sport, I tend to get to it off of a collar tie. The simplest way that I've found to get there from this position is essentially turning away from the collar tie arm, and as I'm doing that, I'm passing it to my free hand. Now, some of the issues that I've had in the past is I don't necessarily shrug the shoulder enough. I'll kind of like pop it a little bit, and I turn my head and tuck away at the same time so that as I pop it, I can clear it to this opposite hand. Recently, I've started really shrugging and almost catching this arm in between my head and shoulder, so it's tucked right up against my neck. And now when I go to turn, I'm getting a little bit more torque behind the elbow, which really releases this hand. Same thing though with this hand. As I start turning away from it, I'm still going to catch at the forearm here. Now this other arm, I'm also going to start getting my forearm involved a little bit more, almost as if I was throwing like a hook. So I'm shrugging, turning, and again, kind of tossing this forearm up in here. At the same time, I catch it with that hand, and we're going to come right up into that Russian tie position. So if we do it from this angle, again, I'm going to shrug, start kind of throwing the arm or passing the arm by, and my free hand is going to catch it in the process as I turn my head. Now the next part again is once we establish this, I want to get nice and high up on the bicep. I want to get my head pressure in right away so that my head's driving in, and I want to tuck this arm nice and tight to my body. You can also like work on cupping the arm and keeping it nice and trapped, but again, that's for kind of like a later date. Now the other way that we get to is from like a weapons perspective. Again, just showing you like one example. So Cash has a weapon in his pocket. He's in the process of trying to draw it, and I start kind of getting hands-on from this. I can also, once I get here and I start cutting off to this angle, I can use that as an opportunity to pass this arm by and actually pull the weapon out. I'm fine with that because again, I've got control. And again, from here, we end up into a Russian tie. So it doesn't really matter for context what the scenario is. It's just the idea that now I've established a Russian tie in some way, shape, or form, and now we have options from here. But this is not a position that I tend to want to hang out in, regardless whether it's sport or self-defense. I want to use this to start initiating takedowns and setting up takedowns. Now, two ways that this is going to happen. I'm either going to bait his pressure, meaning that I'm going to drive into him so that he drives back into me, and I use that as an opportunity to take him down, or I'm going to go depending on what he does with his arm. Meaning, if I'm going here and he just starts pushing me with his arm trying to get me away from him, or if he starts trying to pull his arm back, then I'm also going to initiate takedowns off of that. So just a kind of a few options that we have. Important thing though, I want to stay behind the arm. I want to get shoulder pressure so that again, my shoulder is behind his shoulder blade, driving down, and I want this head pressure. This is the position typically I want to be in with the Russian tie, keeping this nice and tight to my body. Now a simple approach, if I'm just trying to essentially get him to go down to the ground, the premise is I'm just essentially trying to get his knuckles to touch the ground, right? I want to get him into this position so that either I could continue breaking him down from there, or I could look to start kind of working towards the back, right? I can progress towards another position. How do we do that? I can either cut the angle and just start kind of stepping back and dragging the arm down to get him to kind of touch, again, knuckles to the ground. And then from here, I keep that pressure as I work around to the back. And then from there, we kind of lock up. If he's giving me heavy resistance with this, right? I'm trying to pull him down. He's not really going with me. I can also kind of take this leg, step in front. I'm not really trying to sweep him too much. Again, just kind of buckle his weight. And again, I'm going to kind of get him to trip down, bring the knuckles all the way down to the ground. And then from there, I transition towards the back. And again, we just kind of progress from there. Now, if for whatever reason I feel him like pressuring into me with his arm, and he's almost like kind of pushing me away with his arm a little bit, I could almost use this as an opportunity to arm drag. And I'm just simply going to transition my arms. Now, anytime I'm transitioning arm placement, one at a time. I don't want to go from here to this because I'm now completely releasing the arm. So if he's pushing into me, I'm going to use an arm drag setup. I'm going to keep this arm on the bicep. My wrist is going to slide up either above my arm or just underneath my arm, depending on the how high up I am. Once I've got that secured, now the top hand is going to come all the way around, grab his back, and then from there, I can scoot all the way to the back, work from there. Then again, we look to progress. So that's another option. So this one is kind of like I'm going to sit and throw him over the top of me. Not one that I would technically or look to do in a self-defense situation, but for sport especially, if I'm holding this nice and tight to my body and he's really like, this is one where either he's driving into me right away or I'm going to bait him by kind of pressuring in. And when he pressures back, I'm going to step, my opposite leg is going to step through. And as I step through, I'm also tucking the arm to his gut. And now I'm going to sit to my far hip. Now I want to kind of hook my leg to the inside of his knee to kind of help toss him over the top. But if I'm going slow motion with this, as I sit through, I drop, I'm going to fall, throw that leg up and over. I'm going to look to come up on top and kind of pressure down. So if we do that one a little bit more to full speed, right? Either he's going to drive into me right away or I drive into him. As he pressures back, I switch, toss, and we end up on top. But the nice thing is I can use this as a momentum and pressure to kind of get up on top. And then once again, we we progress. You could use that in a self-defense situation. I just want to bank on it because if you end up on your back or on your ass, it's not really a good place for me to be. The other option, and this one you could actually use for both situations, this is going to go off of the idea that he's pulling this arm back to him. And keep this in mind, anytime someone's in a Russian tie and you feel them pulling the arm back, just stuff it. Stuff it to him and use that as a momentum to drive in, or I'm just going to force it back into there as well. Either way, I'm in the process of driving this arm to his gut. I'm going to pressure in so that, again, his weight's going that way. And at the last minute, I'm going to transition down, release the wrist, grab the ankle, and I just pull the ankle up from there. Again, sport, street, self-defense, it doesn't matter. It's a good position for me to kind of pass those legs. I can do damage if we need to. We progress, get them out, side control, it doesn't matter. So one more time on that one, right? Either he's pulling this arm in, and I'm going to stuff it, or I just start driving into him, transition, grab that ankle, and we progress from there. So this one is probably the most painful way to take someone down. And this is a great one to use in sport and also self-defense. I'll show it from both perspectives just to kind of give you the idea from it. But the premise is this. If I feel him pulling his arm back, I'm absolutely going to stuff it to his gut. Now, once I stuff it to his gut, my top hand is going to weave underneath and give yourself a good little thumbs up, right? At this point from here, I'll kind of relax to, take the pressure off Cash. At the same time as I step and hip in, I'm bringing this arm straight up. I'm not just curling it, right? Curling is one part. I literally want to pick this arm up and pressure it in. I'm putting all that pressure onto his forearm. Makes it very uncomfortable for him. And now at this point, once I bring it all the way up and I kind of get him up on his toes, I'm immediately dragging him straight down and out at an angle to bring him all the way down to the ground. And then from here, depending on circumstances, we beat the piss out of him, we take position, we submit him, again, depending on what you're training for. Now, if we're doing this from like a self-defense perspective, right? He's got a blade in his hand. It's typical that guys want to pull and get control of that weapon back, so that's fine. If that's the case, I'm going to stuff it to his gut, weave up nice and tight, so again, that he can't really utilize it. And now I drag him all the way down where I'm still in control. And guess what? I can still pressure in, I can stretch out the weapon, I can control it, and then from there, I just, do whatever we need to do. I can also just clear the distance from here, right? I can kind of pressure, move him around a little bit, give him something to do. Again, because I'm already behind the shoulder, I can very easily just kind of get behind them, clear space, and I can make distance as quickly as possible. Now, the only other thing that you kind of have to be careful of is when I'm holding this, they're going to start getting hands on with that other hand trying to pull back. If that's the case, I can always either switch and grab the wrist or even arm drag and completely just turn and go right into the other position. Same thing, he starts reaching across, trying to pull himself into me, trying to regain control, and I just transition right back to the other side. Not something necessarily that I would do again in a self-defense situation if I don't have to, but for sport, absolutely, if I'm trying to maintain control and then look at takedowns. But there you have it, a few options off the Russian tie, a couple ways that we can get to the Russian tie, but practice those takedowns, and as always, stay safe.